the stories I was getting back from family and friends was, hey, I've made a few extra thousand, or thank you, you helped me get my first house deposit together. And that feeling inside me was stronger than what I was creating perhaps in hospitality, where the enjoyment of doing that for me was bigger. And I wanted to create somewhere where people could go and they could learn, how do I speak to the people like one of them? And I am one of them. So I've come from big debt. It's kind of okay to lose a few bits here and there if you're learning. You would pay that for a course, right? So yeah. You just learn yourself. So for me, it's really important to set out a strategy based on who you are, understand where you want to be, and set yourself a financial goal. How are you going to get there? How long is it going to take me to get there? How much do I need to invest and how much do I need to make per year? And you'll understand very quickly what type of investor you need to be.
Welcome everyone to the Revolutionary Man podcast. I'm the founder of The Awakened Man and your host, Alan DeMonso. Warren Buffett is quoted by saying, if you don't find a way to make your money work while you sleep, you'll be working until you die. Let that sink in for a minute. Scary thing to consider if you don't really understand what he's trying to say. And as we get older, the harder our money has to work for us if we wish to live within the same lifestyle as we are today. And the challenge is there's so many options, aren't there? And it can be hard to determine where to start. Well, today my guest is going to discuss with how we can do just that. Now, before I get into all of that, I'm going to want to remind you to hit like, subscribe, and share on your favorite platform so you can stay up to date on the latest content while helping me grow the Awakened Man message. And for that, I want to say I'm truly grateful. So let's get on with today's episode.
The average man today is sleepwalking through life, many never reaching their true potential, let alone ever crossing the finish line to living a purposeful life. Yet, the hunger still exists, albeit buried amidst his cluttered mind, misguided beliefs, and values that no longer serve him. It's time to align yourself for greatness. It's time to become a revolutionary man. Stay strong, my brother.
As it's customary, I like to always start off by asking a couple of questions to help us set the stage for our conversation today. So, do you know how much money you need to retire as you are living today? And how successful is your plan? Will you reach that goal? I just want to say congrats if you know what your retirement nest egg needs to be and that you're on target to achieve it. But if you're at that other end of the spectrum and you don't know what that number is or how to get there, then stay tuned, as my guest today is Sammie Ellard-King is going to reveal some of his strategies for saving and investing. So allow me to introduce my guest, Sammie Ellard-King. Sammie's day job is as a director of hospitality for a business that owns music venues and bars. He's a successful investor, and his goal is to inspire others through up the gains, because for Sammie, it's not just about the money, it's about the freedom that it creates to enjoy life. Welcome to the show, Sammie. How are things?
Hey, Alan. Yeah, very well. Thank you. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, great. It's great to have you here. I was really impressed with some of the work that you're doing right now, and we're kindred spirits. I've been in hospitality my entire career as well. So we always talk about being on hero's quest or a hero's journey as men. And so I thought we'll start off by that and give you an easy one here. Tell us a little bit about your hero's quest, what your journey was like to where you are today, and how that's shaped you into the man that you are.
It's a good question. It's been a long road. For sure. And to be honest with you, I came from a music background. So my whole family is in music venues. My mum and my father run venues themselves. So I've kind of lived and breathed this, often after school, I'd be dropped off into a jazz club and just left to run around. So I kind of listened to some of the greats at a really young age, and only now I reflect back and see, remember who I saw, which was incredible. So I had a very good upbringing, very different upbringing perhaps to a lot of kids, which it shaped me into who I am today. I studied music myself, wanted to sort of follow in the footsteps of my family and some of the musicians that we have in my family as well. But I wasn't as good as them, if I'm honest. So it kind of led me into something else. Like when I was studying for university, I always had a passion for money. You know, I started my first business when I was 16 years old, and you know, it was a selling clothes to people in the last year of school. I just loved like making money. And when I got my student loan through in the UK, you get your loan paid for your education, but then you also get a grant to kind of subsidize your student housing for you for your first couple of years. And then you also get a little bit extra to buy books. But instead of buying books, I thought, right, well, why don't I put this money to work? So I started my own event. So it quickly grew from, it was called the Monday Club. It was the only night any of the clubs or music venues down in Southampton where I went to university would actually give me a spot. So I proved myself on a Monday. You know, we absolutely smashed it out the park, and then I went from there to creating multiple events and festivals throughout university, eventually sort of realizing, okay, cool, working in venues behind the scenes, creating these nights and putting the music that I want to see on actually was better for me. I was better at that than I was at playing the sax, for example. So, which was a bummer, but you know, hey, you know, these things happen. So yeah, that led me into sort of doing. I moved to London, and I'd done every sort of front of house job going to keep myself going throughout university alongside this. And I'll be flatly honest, I spent every penny I made. You know, I was a young sort of, you know, late teens, early 20s, and enjoyed myself with the money, which was, you know, and from there I worked heavily in cross hospitality. I started in a sales role at 22, just selling events into big venues in London. We have something called Street Feast here in the UK, which is my first job, which is a massive street food market complex, which is sort of 3,000-4,000 people, loads of street food vendors, different concept bars throughout it. It's really cool.
Nice.
It's exploded in the UK now. There's lots of venues like it, but they were sort of the pioneers of this. And I went from there to head of marketing. I was the youngest head of marketing in the UK in hospitality at 25. And since then, I've sort of gone from a couple of different businesses and recently gone into business with a couple of good friends of mine. And we've opened a music venue in London Bridge, which is right in the heart of London. And we also have 4 other bars as well that we run across the city. So yeah, it's a big challenge. You know, hospitality it's tough, man. I'm sure you know. Yeah, it's very tough. You know, like you're only as good as your last take. You know, you're constantly what's tomorrow, and that's the mentality you get, and it can be unforgiving, and it can be tough as well. You know, you need quite a lot of mental resilience to be able to continue along this. And so my journey has kind of led me to this point where a couple of years ago, it was actually during the pandemic, I was already helping friends. I've been investing for years, and I was helping friends and family, and then their friends started, you know, with everyone sitting on the couch, it sort of went from there. And I started a WhatsApp group helping people with their investment decisions, etc. And it was just like, yeah, hey, you know, but you guys should check this out. You should probably buy this at the moment, that type of thing. And it grew too big. And I realized, right, hang on, there's a business here. And actually, I found that really fulfilling, because the stories I was getting back from family and friends was, hey, I've made a few extra thousand, or thank you, you helped me get my first house deposit together. And
Nice.
that feeling inside me was stronger than what I was creating, perhaps in hospitality, where, you know, you're just getting people drunk, let's face it. You know, the enjoyment of doing that for me was bigger. And I wanted to create somewhere where people could go and they could learn. And I've read every book I could get my hands on across investing and saving, etc. And one thing I noticed, especially for the beginner, you know, even the websites that are dedicated to beginners are packed with financial jargon. The tone isn't necessarily resonating with their audience base who they're actually trying to create. And so for me, it was about, how do I speak to the people like one of them? And I am one of them. So I've come from big debt I created throughout my 20s, as I told you before, I spent everything I earned, and I created a lot of debt for myself. I ignored a lot of my debt. I had a terrible financial upbringing. Both my mother and my father are the same. They spend everything they get, and we weren't taught about finance in school as well. So this is, you're not given the tools to learn, and if you're shown the wrong pathway, it can result in catastrophic debt for some people, including myself. So I've worked my way out of that now, become a successful investor. I own my own home with my partner now, and so that journey for me has been huge, and I wanted to show people that it's possible, and really give them the opportunity to kind of create something themselves. So that's kind of where Up the Gains has come from.
Nice. And that's why I was really intrigued about your story, reading up about what you're doing, Sammie, because I have interviewed other folks on the podcast, and and I would suggest that they're not necessarily the uber wealthy, but they're wealthy, right? They're multimillionaires. They've done it, times and times again. But what I really liked about your story is that it so resonates. It reminds me of my youth. And we're in our late teens, early 20s, and we're living hand to mouth because we're just living a life, and we just don't think. And I'm a father of two boys. One's 30 and the other one's 27, and they're in that same mindset of you know what, I got lots of time. Don't worry about it, Dad. Leave me alone. And I just want to have some fun. And exactly. The challenge is that they don't recognize the value, and I want to get into a little bit of that today. But so that's why I really wanted to have you on the show today, because I think your message is so relevant, and I know totally what you mean, because living in the hospital, and working in hospitality as I've done for my career, it's truly a labor of love. We don't do it for the money, because if we were doing it for the money, we would have been gone 2 years into our careers, right? So you do it for a different reason, but it also teaches us so much, like you said, about mental resilience and being able to really have that fortitude. And so I wanted to ask you, who or what were your biggest influences in your life as you were growing up and getting to this point? Like, who would you say would be your biggest influences?
It's my grandfather all day long. He was co-founder of Ronnie Scott's Jazz Club, lifelong owner, which is one of the biggest jazz clubs in London and the world. And for me, he has gone through everything you could possibly imagine, to financial hardship, to success, to trying to keep the lights on 24/7, and the way he worked and the respect that he had, not just in the family, but across the industry and everyone that met him. I always looked up to that as a sort of pillar, and someone that I wanted to be when I grew up. And that's all I've done throughout my whole life, is trying to emulate him. So he without a doubt, him. And, I strive to be like him. He's unfortunately not with us anymore, but, I strive to be like him in everything that I do.
I'm sure he's smiling at you right now, Sammie, for all the effort and everything you're doing. That's so outstanding. So let's start getting into a little bit about investing here. And so the next question I have for you is saving better or is investing better? What would be your take on that?
That's a very good question. Now, I see them as two very, very important things, but very different things. I think they should be part of both of your strategies. Personally, I don't think you should invest until you've saved. So for me, I see saving as breaking it down into two chunks, really. So having money set aside, emergency fund, I think, is the first thing. If you're starting out as an investor and you're thinking, hey, or you want to create something for yourself, you're working towards a financial goal, first thing you need to do, for me, is set aside an emergency fund. Now, that emergency fund can be sort of 3 to 6 months worth of pay. Some people treat it differently. I err on the side of caution, so I try and go as high as I possibly can with that. And once I hit that amount, that then gives you the safety net. If you lose your job or COVID happens, or these types of financial inconveniences that come across our lives every day, something, the roof blows off, you crash your car, there's so many different things. If you don't have that backup, you're then forced to then take out debt to then pay off what's just happened to you. And then, of course, if you can't then pay that debt, that then spirals, and actually you're in a worse off position. You might have loads of investments, but what if the stock market's dropped and you can't take out your investments? Suddenly you don't have that secure net. So for me, savings, that is really, really important. I also have what's called a sinking fund. So I put aside, basically we tried to pay, me and my partner, we have a joint account for this, a joint sinking fund, because all of the bills are joint, really, the car insurance, the house insurance, etc. And we do that by putting aside, actually we use what's called a Roundup app. So all of our purchases is on our joint card, rounds up, and at the end of the year we have quite a good chunk of cash, which we then pay off a yearly insurance amount. And then what that does is, here in the UK, and I'm sure in the US as well, and all around the world, in Canada, you'll get a month or two off if you pay up front, right? And so you've then saved yourself a couple of £100 or dollars, and then you can use that money that you've saved again to perhaps do something cool, do something fun with it. If there's money left in that, that's for you. That's for you guys to enjoy yourself. Go away on a weekend, or, upgrade one of the living rooms, repaint the house, whatever that is, that's going to sort of make you feel happy that you've done that. But it's a sense of achievement that you've done by creating that. And so we focus on those two things as key pillars of saving. I really encourage people to do that first, and set those things up. If you're not comfortable with putting away huge sums of money straight away, use Roundup apps. They're fantastic. You don't even think about the purchase. You pay £4.50 and you round it up to £5. That extra 50 pence is gone, right? Like, you just see it as £5. And these days but over time that adds up hugely. So that for me is saving. And I don't save more than that. Everything else goes into investments. And I see that is the big difference. Now, that can be across real estate, stocks, crypto, if you're into that. There's tons of things you can invest your money into. Yourself, business as well. You can create your own business, invest into yourself. So there's two sides. There's two sides to saving, investing, and that's kind of how I see it, really.
Yeah, that is outstanding. Love the idea of the Roundup apps. And in a little bit, I want to talk about some of the, because it sounds like you're really big on using apps, and I want to get into that, because I think we're in it for part of my audience. A good chunk of my audience is in around your age group, and I think that really resonate with them. But before we get into that, you talked about in your introduction there, in your hero's journey, that you read a lot of books. So I was curious to find out, which books have really helped you on your journey, and how they helped influence your strategy of what you're doing today.
So JD Roth, How to Achieve Financial Independence is a great Audible. It's How to Achieve Financial Independence and Retire Early. It's a bit of a mouthful, but it's an Audible. So I'm a big fan of Audibles. I put them on while I'm working, and I tune in and tune out to when something's good and something's good. And you can have it on in the background. I can have it on the train, on the commute to work. I feel like I'm learning while I'm doing something else, and that it adds a lot of value to me. But this was the book that changed my life. I was deep in debt. I had about £20,000, which is about 30,000 US dollars, in debt from university. I was ignoring it, and I had no way out. I was actually interest was growing. I was spending everything I earned. I was just paying off interest every time I paid it back, and it wasn't going down. And JD Roth has exactly the same story. He was deep in debt, and he's now financially free. He goes all around the world speaking about it. He's a big part of the FIRE movement. And he has this amazing 7-part series, which you can listen to. And it's not that long. They're about 30-minute episodes. And he talks about how to structure your debt, and how to target high interest debt first, and target one debt at a time. So if you've got multiple credit cards, sit down, look at them. What's the highest interest rate on all of them? And then just target that one, pay the least off on the rest while you just hit big on that one. Yeah. And I didn't know this, and I was, as a 25-year-old kid, you're like, well, what the hell? So that for me, he changed my way of thinking about money. I had a relationship with money, which was like, how can I buy the next thing? How can I get the next thing? How can I go out this weekend? How can I have fun with my friends? How can I go on that holiday? Whereas I realized that if I had multiple streams of income coming through, then I wouldn't need to worry about those purchases at all. And I was worrying about those purchases, and that relationship with money was a bad one. So that really changed my life. So I would really recommend anyone to go and listen to that.
Absolutely. I love that book as well. I think it'd be a great listen for everyone. And I'm a big fan of Audible as well. I've been a member probably for more than, geez, got to be close to 15 years now. And it's just amazing. It just, forget the tapes anymore, tape series. I'm an old guy, so I still remember the cassette tapes and then the CDs.
I've still got a few.
Yeah. Right. And, but Audible has been so powerful for a learning platform, and, you just got to take time. And there you go again, we're talking about investing in ourselves, and, it's like $15 a month or whatever it is
exactly.
It's nothing. So,
and you get so many credits, but podcasting as well these days, I listen to Audible as much as I possibly can, but if I'm on the train, a 40-minute episode of a podcast is fantastic. You can come on and learn so many different things. Like for me, I listen to Financial Freedom by Grant Sabatier, who's the founder of millennialmoney.com. He's fantastic. I would really implore sort of beginners, but equally as well, professionals themselves to go and listen to his journey and some of the investors that he gets onto his show, because it really helps you learn process. But because when I came into investing, and it was eyes wide, like let's go, and you soon realize that actually there's probably about 1 million different strategies that you can take, and it's like, oh my god, hang on a second, what who am I, what do I need to do? And his guests really help you understand who you want to be as an investor. Nice. And I really like that.
Cool. Excellent. So you started to talk a little bit about technology. So I want to, really dive into that. And with this explosion of apps, like it just seems like there's an app for everything. So what apps what would you recommend? And let's start a little bit talking about maybe some budgeting, getting into some investing, and then obviously some savings. So which one of those would you recommend and that you're using today?
Well, I'm actually quite old school when it comes to budgeting as such. I have an Excel spreadsheet. It really we've actually built one ourselves. It's called the Live a Little household budget. It really does everything from debt repayments to household budgeting to financial freedom calculators, you name it, it's all on there. So I built that for myself and then actually released it as a product, because I thought I sent it to a few people and they're like, hey man, this is pretty cool. So, but I'm using Excel every day for looking at financials for our business, so it made a lot of sense for me. It was just like that go-to. But one app I use, in the UK we have Monzo, in the US it's an equivalent of SoFi. Do you know SoFi?
Yes. Yeah.
So it's very, very similar, and in a lot of ways it's actually powered by the same technology, which is called Galileo. So they in Monzo they have budgeting suites where actually it suggests to you automatically. So for example, it knows exactly how much I've got paid and how much is going out each month, and it will tell me, hey, Sammie, you've got, let's say, I don't know, £500 left this month. Maybe put £100 into your sinking fund, £50 into this, and then put £200 into your investments, because actually you don't need this money. So you're like, oh, okay, thanks very much, Monzo. It really kind of jigs it to you. And for me, especially when I was younger, I needed someone to tell me. And so having that tech, I trust this app. I use it for everything. So, all my personal accounts, my joint accounts are on it, my credit cards with it, everything's on it, right? So I trust it. And so when it starts making suggestions to me and smart suggestions, you listen. I just think that utilizing something like that, an app-based technology for budgeting. I think there's another one called Money Easy. I don't know if that's in the US or Canada. Then, but that again that's a lot more high-powered spec budgeting where they do the similar things for you, but they actually automatically invest the money for you. Mm-hmm. So you can set payment thresholds where you can say, hey, if I have X amount of percentage of my money left each month, automatically invest that for me into these select index funds, for example. And it does it for you. So you don't even need to think about it. And again, I think when you take the thought process out of it, for a lot of people, they don't have to again go go in and research and think, oh, hang on, what should I be investing in this? If you've got like a global fund that's already set up, you're happy to put your money into it because it's safe. So there's a big advocate of technology. So when it comes to investing, I use multitude of different apps for different things. So I have what's called a stocks and shares ISA, which is similar to a lot of accounts in the US and America, but it's essentially stocks and shares ISA in the UK is a tax wrap. So I think you've got 401k, right? So you can put money into it each year. The capital gains that you make back off it are not taxable. And you can put £20,000 in the UK into this each year. So I have that on one side. Then I have a private pension as such, which again is a tax wrap as well. You can put £40,000 to that into the UK a year. And that, again, that's not taxable, but you can't withdraw it until you're 60, 65, 66 now in the UK. So I use these two different things, but they're based on two different apps. Everything is app based. I don't use traditional brokers. So I like seeing and being able to pick my phone up and how are they doing and utilizing these dashboards that they've created. And technology is really, for the retail investor like myself and everybody else, these apps now, with a click of a button, in 5 minutes, you can be investing. You can be placing a trade on Tesla if you want to. So I find that fascinating.
Yeah, I think it's so. I think it's just so fascinating on how they can and how technology has been able to help this out, and it fits so well. And I can see I can see this being such a different conversation with my children and in helping them understand. Because the moment we start talking about technology, then they're a little bit more interested to hear what the old man has to say. And I think in having them listen to this podcast, especially about how you were able to simplify. You finally understood, through your journey, it sounds like you were able to understand the kind of an investor and the kind of person you were. You understood your relationship with money and were able to fix some things. And then you use technology that you're comfortable with. It made sense and do that journey. So I think that's so cool.
Let's be honest, I've made a lot of mistakes along the way, like a lot of mistakes. And I think you have to. But when you're paying with hundreds of pounds and not thousands or millions of pounds, it's kind of okay to lose a few bits here and there if you're learning. You would pay that for a course, right? So you just learn yourself, and that's if you're making your mistakes yourself, that's the biggest thing you can learn, I think, for me. So
yeah, I love that. That's a great analogy there, Sammie. About for sure, we would spend any amount of money for a course if we were really truly invested, maybe even thousands of dollars. So why not invest and learn by learning in making smaller mistakes to your point, right? The $100 mistake as opposed to the thousands and thousands of dollar mistakes. And when your account gets to that point and you're able to absorb that risk and you're okay with it, then that's a different story. But to start out, and that's really what I really liked and appreciate about your story it's really about helping the average investor who's doesn't really know what they're doing and able to get started, and you don't need a lot. And so you talked a little bit about the stock market and to be honest, right. It's not, I invest in the stock market. I look at safe stuff. I'm looking at blue chips. I'm looking at businesses that I understand, but what are some tips do you have for people to help them navigate the stock market? Are you using it strictly on the app, or do you have anything else that you might fall on?
That's a good question. To be honest with you, I have two very different strategies. I use sort of my stocks and shares ISA is what my sort of a general investment trading account, right? And I take a lot more risk with that account than I do with my private pension. So my private pension, I invest solely in index funds. The S&P, NASDAQ. I use the Vanguard Total Stock Market Index. Some Asia. But I break it down. So for me, it's really important to set out a strategy based on who you are, understand where you want to be, and set yourself a financial goal. How are you going to get there? How long is it going to take me to get there? How much do I need to invest and how much do I need to make per year? And you'll understand very quickly what type of investor you need to be. And that can be, for someone like myself, early 30s, I'm a medium risk investor. If you're in your early 20s, and to be honest, I could even be a high risk investor because I have a time frame of 20 years to my financial freedom goal, essentially. So for me, once you've got that, you can then start to look into how you want to place your money. I have a set amount of money which comes from my wages and the passive income that we create on Up the Gains. And what I do is I split that straight down the middle, and it goes into two different parts. And then one into the private pension, one into the general investing account. I know I'm not going to see that money in the private pension for a good few years, but when I do get there, it's going to be a nice payday. It's going to be good. So I look at it like that. And then my general investment account is, I invest in businesses which I think are going to change the world. So I take risks with these guys. Right now in the market, I'm sure if you're looking, it's probably been beaten down since December. It's not been fun, especially with a lot of these high growth names. But if you're willing to hold them like I am for 10, 15 years until they reach their potential, then you're going to pay dividends off. And as long, I see this as because I invest monthly, I'm buying these companies consistently at different price points. So they may be up tomorrow and they may be down the next day. But if I buy constantly, sometimes they'll be higher, sometimes they'll be lower. But if I know that over 10 years time, I've got multiple price points and these companies are just going to keep succeeding, eventually my average price that I purchased it for will be low. So that's the way I see it. So it's a longer term goal. So this is what you need to do. It's really about having, once you get paid, invest that money, save that money, put that money into your sinking fund, into your emergency fund, into your investment account. Do that first. And if you create that habit, you'll see the difference over a number of years. That when I was in debt, I wanted to become an investor, but I realized that without having a good chunk of money put aside, I was never going to be financially free. So for me, I wanted to create wealth quickly, and everybody does, right? I realized quickly that wasn't the way you can do it. If you're averaging above 8% a year, you're one of the best investors in the world, and that's the truth. So if you've got to have that in your mind early, and if you think you're going to be doing doubling your money in 6 months, then this game isn't for you. You probably need to go and play the roulette table. But and we all know how that turns out. But
house always wins.
Exactly. So look, what I would do is I tell everyone that I work with that the minimum goal you need to set yourself is 10 years. That mitigates risk, because the stock market is going to go up and it's going to go down. It's going to go left, right, up, down. It's not a straight line, and it never will be. And so by doing 10 risk, I heard a great bit of data come out of this Motley Fool podcast, and they said if you invest in the S&P 500, which is the 500 biggest companies in America, in one day, let's say you put £1,000 in, you have a 52% chance of making a profit. Now, if you invest for 10 years, that percentage goes up to 97.7%. So that just goes to show that over time, your risk, I'm taking that bet, 97.7%, you're taking that bet. So, if that long-term thinking really will allow you to win. And if you've invested monthly as well throughout that 10 years, can you imagine what chance you'd have of making a profit? A pretty big one.
Absolutely. So, I love that story, Sammie, about, it's about consistent effort. You're taking the power of dollar cost averaging with your investment strategy, which makes so much sense for folks, especially when you're at younger age and you're at that medium to high risk where you can take a longer time to do stuff, and you don't need to put such large dollars in if you've started too late. And so I really like the strategy you're talking about. So let's get into that. We're talking, talking about when is the best time would you recommend for someone to start investing?
As soon as they can.
Like yesterday?
Yeah, as soon as you can. I think the barrier to entry has gone down so high. Like back, when I first started, I was placing trades and I was paying upwards of sometimes £19 to place that trade just with that. I wanted to buy Apple and I want to buy one share, but I got to pay £19. And at the time, that was almost like 10% immediately down on that trade. But people like eToro, Robinhood, these guys have come along and changed the game with, zero commission trading and allowing people to, eToro, for example, who I have my general investment account with. I can place a trade for $10, which is amazing. And it means that if I see a quick opportunity and, I've got a spare £10 lying around, I just put it in, because it's so low. And you didn't have that before, sort of 7-8 years ago when I first started out. And I think that's changed the game, because it allows people that are on low incomes to really become a part of something greater than what they possibly could have 10 years ago. Yeah. So even if you only have $40 a month to put aside into this, you've got the biggest opportunity you could ever have now. And technology has done that for people. And so for me, you should be beginning investing as soon as you possibly can. My sister, had a really long conversation with her last week. She's like, no, I just want to keep putting money into my savings account. And I sat her down and I showed her and I talked to her about inflation. And I said, what's happening to your savings? It's going down every year. And she was like, no, it's not. I was like, no, it really is. Look at the data. Look. And obviously with your sister, it's a little bit like, she's like, shut the hell up. And I'm like, okay, no. But now she's seeing the benefit, and she's 25 years old. So she's now putting a portion of her wages away each month. She still puts some money into a savings account because that's what she wants to do. And, I couldn't fight that fight, but at least she's saving money, and not spending it, because she wants to get her onto the property ladder. And I said to her, look, trust me, just put this money away, do it for 5 years. And I guarantee you by the time you're 30, you're going to have the money. It's a big guarantee. So if it all goes Pete Tong, then I'm in big trouble. But look, for me, she should continue doing that for the rest of her life. It's creating that habit now, and she'll never stop if she sees the benefit of that. And I really want to set people on that journey and give them the belief that they can do it.
100%, absolutely. Like it does, and those are some of those harder conversations, right? Like you're talking about that with your sister, and I'm thinking about my boys, and I think once they really see the wisdom, and you're putting out the statistics, like this isn't just big brother or dad talking. This is, look, you can either have somebody else tell you this, hopefully you'll listen, or you can listen while you're explaining it, and you're living proof of the strategy that you're doing. So at least you're all providing that. So tell me, how does someone then, you're doing all this stuff, so how do we really create then lasting wealth, something that's going to last beyond ourselves?
It's a great question. I believe once you get to a certain point, if you do have children, you could, for example, if you're in a good financial position, you could open a junior ISA for them. I think that's a wonderful thing to do for your kid. 18 years of investing, even let's say £20 a month, that's going to be a really nice chunk when they hit that 18 mark. Sets them off, might pay for college, university, or even buy them their first home. So I think creating lasting wealth, it's about time. You just need to understand it's about time. Compound interest is your best friend. If you're not taking money out of your investment account, you're reinvesting the interest or the dividends that you're creating out of your stock. Eventually, you'll start to see that the interest vastly outweighs the amount of deposits that you're putting in. It's huge. Look at the graph, it kind of goes up and then it just goes sky high. Yeah. But that happens with time. That happens over 20, 25 years. It's never going to happen in 5 years.
Yeah.
So to create lasting wealth, you need to just be monotonous with your strategies. Keep going. If you get a pay rise, make sure that money goes up. If you get a bonus, put that money away, and you'll soon see that you're the benefit from it. And then once you're seeing the benefit from it, you're already on that train, and that train is just going to gradually keep speeding up. And once you get to a certain point in your life where you can live off your investments, then happy days. For me, that's lasting wealth. But for me, lasting wealth is more about something. For me, I'm doing this because I want to hand something down to my children. I want to be able to give them a better start in life. And I really believe in that. So that for me is about being a better man and being the right human, giving something back.
Nice. Outstanding. So, of everything that we've spoken about today, or maybe there's something we haven't yet talked about, what would be the one takeaway you'd want our listeners to take with them?
Yeah, I would say that don't be scared. That for me, it's really important. There's this stigma of the stock market and investing, that it's these high-powered guys in big fancy double lapel suits and these huge ivory towers, and they're the ones that control the world. That's not true. It really isn't. Just do a little digging, have a little look online, and don't be scared. There's people like myself, but there's other fantastic platforms out there that are really available, and they want you to learn. The more people that get into the stock market, the better, the more money everybody's going to make over time. So I would say don't let fear stop you from doing something. I would really kind of embrace that and turn that fear into something else.
Right on. Well, I just want to say thank you so much, Sammie, for spending time with me today. It's never too late to start investing. Creating a budget so you can start investing, even a small amount, will pay dividends in the long run. And you don't think that you're too old to start. Just start investing. Sammie, you've provided us with some great insights today on how to budget, save, and invest. So if someone wanted to get a hold of you or get involved in one of your programs, how would they go about doing that?
Sure. So we are upthegains.co.uk. That's upthegains.co.uk. And we're also on Twitter, uptheGainsMoney, and Instagram, uptheGainsMoney as well. So yeah, come and give us a follow. We've got plenty of learning on our website for free as well. We run a weekly blog column, but we also have an ebook out as well, which is how to approach investing for the beginner. So you can grab that as well. It's £3.50 in the UK, so it's about £4.50, $4.5. So yeah, come and say hello as well on Twitter. I'd love to have a chat with you guys if you want to ask any questions and get involved. I'm more than happy to help.
Right on. Well, I'll make sure I put all that information in the show notes. Once again, I just want to say thank you so much for spending time with me today.
Our pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for listening to the Revolutionary Man podcast. Are you ready to own your destiny? To become more the man you are destined to be? Join the brotherhood that is The Awakened Man at theawakenedman.net and start forging a new destiny today.